Imagine driving past the same quiet farm for 3 long years, wondering where your mother, your sister, your wife could possibly be, never knowing her body was sealed inside a rusty fertilizer tank just yards away on the family property. For 1,224 days, her family held on to a fragile thread of hope. They organized searches, plastered towns with her face, and pleaded for answers. They drove this very road, looking toward the home she shared with her husband, a place that should have been a sanctuary. Instead, it was a tomb, hiding a monstrous secret in plain sight. Every sunrise and sunset over these fields was a reminder of her absence, a constant aching question mark hanging over their lives. The truth, when it finally came, was more horrific than any scenario they could have braced themselves for. This isn't a horror movie. This is the real-life nightmare of Dee Warner, the 52-year-old Michigan wife and mother who vanished without a trace in April 2021. Her husband, farmer Dale Warner, insisted he had nothing to do with it. For years, the case stayed cold. Then, in August 2024, investigators cracked open that tank and found Dee's remains wrapped in tarps, her mouth and nose taped shut. The discovery was the culmination of a relentless 3-year investigation fueled by a family that refused to give up. They had long suspected Dale, pointing to a volatile marriage and his strange behavior after Dee's disappearance. But with no body, their accusations were just that, accusations. Dale maintained his story. Dee had simply left him, perhaps for a new life in Mexico or Jamaica. He sold her belongings and moved on, but the questions lingered, whispered in the community and shouted by Dee's loved ones. Where was she? The answer was there all along, concealed by steel and rust, waiting for the day the truth would be unearthed. In March 2026, a Lenawee County jury took just 2 days to find Dale Warner guilty of second-degree murder and tampering with evidence. He had hidden his wife's body in plain sight the entire time. The verdict brought a wave of relief, but it couldn't erase the years of torment. The prosecution laid out a chilling timeline of betrayal. They argued that Dale, facing an impending divorce and the potential loss of millions, decided to end his wife's life rather than his marriage. The jury agreed. The man who had played the part of the abandoned husband was, in fact, a cold-blooded killer who had allowed his wife's children and grandchildren to live in a state of agonizing uncertainty, all while he went about his daily life on the very land where he'd hidden her. Tonight, on Shadows of the Unresolved, we dive deep into one of the most shocking no-body cases that finally delivered a body and justice. The toxic marriage, the tracking device, the Google searches, the backhoe moving the tank, and the ultimate betrayal that left a family driving past their loved one's secret grave for years. We'll examine the critical moments and missed opportunities in the investigation. We'll hear from the family members who never stopped fighting and the investigators who pieced together a puzzle 3 years in the making. We will reconstruct the final, terrifying hours of Dee Warner's life and expose the digital breadcrumbs her killer thought he had erased. This is a story about the darkness that can fester behind a picturesque facade and the unyielding power of a family's love in the face of unimaginable evil. The shadows on that Michigan farm run deeper than anyone imagined. April 24, 2021, Lenawee County, Michigan. a sprawling, tight-knit farming community where everyone knows their neighbours and secrets are hard to keep. But on this particular Saturday, a secret was born that would haunt the community for years. 52-year-old Dee Warner simply vanishes. She was 5'4", a mother, a wife of longtime farmer Dale Warner. Dee was a successful businesswoman in her own right, running a trucking company and a farming operation. She was known for her vibrant personality and her devotion to her children. But on the night of April 24th, her life came to an abrupt and mysterious halt. That night, her phone, bank accounts and social media went completely silent. No one ever saw her leave the family property on camera. For 3 long years, her daughter Bock and brother Greg Hardy begged police for answers. They described the marriage as extremely toxic. Dale Warner, then 58, was a prominent Tecumseh area farmer. To the outside world, he and Dee were a power couple, building a significant agricultural empire. But behind the scenes, the relationship had turned dark. Friends and family say Dee was planning to leave Dale and had even consulted a divorce attorney. She told them she was afraid. Testimony later revealed Dale stalked Dee, placed a tracking device on her car, and there were allegations of domestic violence. Her family saw the warning signs, but never imagined it would end like this. They believed Dale's control over Dee was absolute, extending to her finances and her freedom. Initially, it was a missing persons case handled by the Lenawee County Sheriff's Office. Dale told investigators that Dee had left after an argument, possibly heading to Mexico or Jamaica. But her family never believed it. They organized search parties, hired private investigators, and kept Dee's story alive in the media, convinced she had met with foul play on the farm. Their persistence paid off. In August 2023, Michigan State Police took over. The new team brought fresh eyes and resources, re-interviewing witnesses and executing new search warrants on the sprawling Warner property. By November 2023, they had enough to charge Dale with open murder and tampering with evidence, even without a body. It was a classic no-body murder prosecution. Dale pleaded not guilty and sat in jail awaiting trial. For the family, the arrest was a long-awaited step toward justice. But it was also the beginning of a new, agonizing chapter. Without a body, prosecutors would have to rely entirely on circumstantial evidence to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. They would need to convince a jury that Dee Warner was not just missing, but murdered, and that her husband, the man who claimed she simply walked away, was the one responsible for her permanent silence. The stage was set for a dramatic legal battle that would captivate the state and test the very limits of the justice system. Then, on August 17, 2024, more than 3 years after Dee disappeared, everything changed. For years, the investigation had been a frustrating series of dead ends and unanswered questions. Dee's family and friends had never given up hope, relentlessly pushing for answers, keeping her name in the public eye. Their persistence finally paid off when a new witness came forward, providing a crucial piece of information that pointed investigators directly back to the one place they had searched before, but with a new, chilling focus: the sprawling farm on Paragon Road. Police executed a search warrant on Dale's Paragon Road property in Franklin Township. The search was methodical, covering acres of land, barns, and outbuildings. But it was inside a dimly lit storage building, tucked away behind stacks of equipment, that they found it. Inside a storage building, they found a large anhydrous ammonia fertilizer tank. It had been resealed, repainted and tagged with a handwritten sign that read, "Out of service, "Do not fill." The fresh paint and meticulous sealing seemed odd for a piece of equipment supposedly destined for the scrap heap. It was a deliberate attempt at concealment, a red flag that immediately drew the investigators' full attention. They knew, with a sinking feeling, that this was no ordinary piece of discarded farm machinery. When they cracked it open, they discovered Dee Warner's remains. The horrific discovery sent shockwaves through the community and brought a devastating end to her family's desperate 3-year search. The hope they had clung to for so long was extinguished in an instant, replaced by the brutal reality of what Dale had done. The autopsy was devastating. Dee died from strangulation combined with blunt force trauma to her head and face. The forensic pathologist determined the injuries were inflicted with extreme violence, indicating a brutal personal attack. Prosecutors told jurors Dale had taped her mouth and nose so she couldn't breathe. This final cruel act ensured she had no way to cry for help, no way to fight for her last breath. Her body had been hidden inside that sealed tank the entire time, right on the family's own land, just miles from where she vanished. For 3 years, as family and volunteers searched fields and woods, Dee was right there, concealed in plain sight by the man who claimed to love her. Evidence against Dale was overwhelming and coldly calculated. Phone records showed he had Googled what to do with a 1,000-gallon tank. This search was made in the early morning hours, just after Dee was last seen alive, a chilling window into his premeditated plan. Drone footage and witness testimony captured him using a backhoe to move the very same rusty fertilizer tank from a burn pile to the storage building. He had even welded it shut. The prosecution argued this wasn't just hiding a body, it was an elaborate industrial-scale effort to entomb his wife, to erase her from existence. Forensic evidence linked Dale to the tank, including fingerprints and matching paint samples. Fibers found on the duct tape used to seal Dee's mouth were a match to the gloves found in Dale's workshop. Every piece of evidence was a link in a chain, methodically forged by Dale himself, leading investigators directly to him and revealing the cold, calculated nature of his crime. The trial and the verdict. Trial kicked off in early 2026. Jurors heard weeks of testimony about the toxic relationship, the tracking device, the domestic violence, and the meticulous way Dale allegedly disposed of his wife's body. On March 10, 2026, after 9 hours of deliberation over 2 days, the jury delivered the verdict: guilty of second-degree murder and tampering with evidence. When the words were read, Dale Warner stared at the floor and slowly shook his head in disbelief. Dee's family members in the gallery cried and hugged one another in quiet relief. Sentencing is scheduled for May 7, 2026. Dale faces up to life in prison. Think about it. For 3 years, Dee's loved ones drove past that very property, wondering where she was, while her body lay hidden in plain sight inside a tank meant for fertilizer. The ultimate betrayal by the one man who was supposed to protect her. As the echoes of this case fade into the night, one truth remains. Some shadows never fully lift. The unanswered questions, the whispers in the dark, the lives forever changed, they linger. Here at Shadows of the Unresolved, we peel back the layers of the cases that refuse to rest. If you felt that chill, if you need to know what hides just beyond the light, hit that subscribe button now and step deeper into the shadows with us. Because the truth is still out there, waiting. Until the next unresolved mystery, stay watchful.